What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here with you guys on this Friday, and I want to talk about the offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I teased this yesterday. In my opinion, and we haven't broken down the offensive line at large yet this year, this is the most important position group on the team. I don't care how much they put into the defensive line. I don't care how much you worry about corner and wide receiver. While those are issues, I don't think anything is more important than offensive line this year for the Steelers. I think how Aaron Rodgers is going to play, how this run game's going to be, how everything's going to work is going to be dictated extremely by this offensive line and exactly what they do. And so let's talk about it because you guys asked a lot of questions about it. And so let's start with what I would say is the most contentious player, maybe on the entire roster right now, just because of his struggles, being Broderick Jones. And this is a good question. Just asking me kind of where do I see Broderick Jones going? How much optimism is there from him switching sides? And so much more on that front. And Broderick Jones, to me, when you watch him play, it's just not a fun watch. I mean, he's all over the place when you watch him. His technique is sloppy. He doesn't even get assignments down sometimes, from snap count to just do you pull on this play? Is it a reach block? Is it a down block? Like, there are plays where he just does the wrong thing. He takes bad angles in the open field in the run game. Like, there is so much that is frustrating to me about watching Broderick Jones play football. It's not fluid, it's not pretty, everything is all over the place. I think you could probably call it lackadaisical. I don't think that's a harsh word for the way he plays football. He has bad hands. Sometimes his pad level is bad. He gets beat by speed and power because he catches instead of trying to get aggressive. And when he does get aggressive, he kind of bends and ducks his head. Like, there's a lot of issues, and it's kind of different. Sometimes he'll do one thing and then fall off on another, right? Sometimes the footwork will be there and then the hands are there, and then he's actually catching somebody instead of getting up on them. Or sometimes the feet are crossed and he gets beat to the outside. Like, there are always things that he has, and it was all the things he still had out of Georgia. He just hasn't taken much of a leap. Now, we can debate how much of that is them moving him around. We can debate how much of that is him himself. It's probably a little bit of both. I think it's fair to blame him for some of it. I think it's fair to blame the Steelers for some of that. But this year, he's going back to left tackle. I am going to tell you guys right now, there are people that I think are looking at this and saying it's going to be the cure all. And it could be, but I don't think it's realistic. I don't. And because there's not a lot of change around him, and he's just so raw. But I think the realistic expectation is, can we find some consistency here? Right? It's not necessarily can he just become one of the best tackles in football. It's can you get the basics down? Can we see some leap in technique that says, oh, he's going in the right direction? Because he was so raw coming out of Georgia. He was a 1 year starter. He was super young. So this guy certainly still has the ability to turn things around, especially because of the circumstances we talked about. But I think it's a little unrealistic to suddenly think he's going to be an elite tackle. But can he be at least serviceable? Because last year, I wouldn't even call him serviceable. His tape was, I mean, I watched all the tape back just in preparation for talking about this. It was ugly. And so let's see where Broderick goes. And so if they can get the boon they got in the run game from him this year, because they got it his rookie year. He was an awesome run blocker his rookie year. If they can find that, I think part of it was the wrist elbow injury he had last year. He didn't have a ton of power in his pop at the point of attack, but he did his rookie year. If he can get some of that back, I think you can live with some of the pass pro struggles. Certainly, I think if you can run a lot of play action and kind of trying to hide him a little bit, that'll be important. But if he can take a leap from where he is now to serviceable, that'll say, okay, there's things going here. And listen, sometimes it takes guys 4 or 5 years when they're this raw and this young coming out of college to tackle to have the light go on. It really does sometimes take that long for these players at this position to learn and get everything in order. So we will see if that ends up happening. But Broderick is, I think, the biggest piece of the puzzle here because I feel good about Zach Frazier. Isaac Seumalo, I think, had struggles last year, and I think is starting to show some age with some of his athleticism dropping off a bit. But I do think he's at least a fine player. I think when you ask him to be your best player, I think that's an issue when you're kind of looking at Isaac Seumalo and saying, "Ah, he's the guy that we think is going to be the best lineman." And that's kind of what you went into last year thinking. We think he's going to be the best lineman on the team. When he was with the Eagles, he was the fifth best lineman on those lines. And so it doesn't necessarily mean he has to be the fifth best, but he's on a cheap contract anyways, relative to what guards are getting paid nowadays. If you can just get solid play from him, and I think they can get that from him, you'll be fine. Broderick Jones is going to be the X factor of this. Zach Frazier, I think, is already a top five center, if not a top three center. I mean, we're talking about a guy that has the ceiling of potentially being the best center in football. And that's the thing. When you look at him and you look at Zach Frazier, just his strength, his body control, his core strength, his ability to finish on blocks. There's so much that you just point out and say, wow, is he so good at this? And he's a rookie. And then he's going to be a second year guy. If he takes a leap, I mean, we're talking about a guy that I think is going to be a cornerstone piece for this franchise. He was one of the best centers in football as a rookie. I love the upside you have with him. Let's just continue to see it going. And so I am a huge fan of Zach Frazier and what we saw from him. He's a force multiplier on the run game. He's a steady player in pass pro. He's great at kind of pointing out stunts and blitzes. He's very smart, even though he's not going to be a super vocal leader. I think he can be somebody that you trust and rely upon to be a leader on the football field. By example, this is the type of player I think that you love to have on your football team. So I think he's a cornerstone. Mason McCormick, interesting player in terms of kind of what he did last year. And I think some people are being a little harsh on him. I've seen some people in recent weeks kind of saying, "Oh, he wasn't that good last year." Listen, guys, let's talk about the circumstances this guy played with. He was a fourth round pick thrust into action because James Daniels tore his Achilles. He wasn't even expected to play that much. Maybe as a tackle eligible. Not much more than that. They were kind of planning to get him adjusted, even though he's an older rookie. He's coming from the FCS, very run heavy offense at South Dakota State. It wasn't a lot of drop back passes, shotgun, things like that. Just wasn't a lot of it. And so even in Arthur Smith's offense was still, run heavy and under center. It's just a way more passing than it was at the FCS level. And so you're thrusting that guy in. And so what they got out of a rookie, a fourth round rookie, when you look at it, I thought was good. I mean, there are issues on his tape, right? He's definitely a guy that swells his pads. He gets high and can get knocked back a little bit. You would like to see that improve a little bit. In pass pro, can certainly open the gate a little early. Hands can get a little wide. There's some issues that he needs to fix in pass pro. I think pass pro is a very much a work in progress, but he didn't do it a lot at South Dakota State. He's a 16-game starter, but I mean, they ran the ball so heavily at South Dakota State. You got to use that context. And so, for what they got out of it, I think it was rather promising to see what they got on Mason McCormick. And so, I'm really not that down on Mason McCormick. I understand why, if you look at the tape, you would be. But we're talking about a guy that's got the right demeanor, high character, good athlete, a nasty player up front. And I thought very fixable technique improvements. I think he's got the right wiring to improve. So I'm cautiously optimistic about what we're seeing here with Mason McCormick. We'll see. I think he's another guy that needs to take that leap. I'm not, fully on board with him being someone that is like, wow, a plug and play option right now. But I am cautiously optimistic about it. And then we get to Troy Fautanu. And he's another question mark, but my goodness, am I super high on Troy Fautanu. I love Troy Fautanu's tape. Going back to Washington, he looks so natural this year at right tackle. When I see him in practice, it just feels like the light's on there. He's got very polished technique coming into the NFL. He's a great athlete. I thought his game against the Broncos last year against Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper was really good and really promising. When you faced those two really good edge rushers in Denver, I thought he played at a really high level against those guys. And so I'm really excited to see Troy Fautanu. I think he's got the potential to be a really good player for them. And so, while yes, I understand the questions are kind of more health related, honestly, for me, I think on the field he's going to be really good as long as he stays healthy. That'll be the big question. I think this guy has a chance to be a big time upgrade for them and really give them a good player there on the right side. So the guy I'm most concerned about by far, Broderick Jones. The tape last year was just bad. Let's not sugarcoat it, guys. It was just bad tape. Uh, can the move to the left side plus a year of trying to get things back? He's lighter now. He's put in work in the offseason. Can all of that kind of work to his benefit? Because he's got a long way to go. A lot of what he struggled with at Georgia, he still struggles with now. There hasn't been a lot of change. I think some of that you can blame on him, some of that you can blame flip-flopping, going back and forth. So let's see how that goes. He's by far the biggest X factor, but this offensive line is going to be the biggest X factor on the entire team. If they are able to protect Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers is going to be able to sling the ball because he can still throw deep. Here's the thing. Last year, when Aaron Rodgers was with the Jets, he was banged up. He hurt his hamstring, hurt his knee, still recovering from the Achilles injury, was taking shot after shot after shot behind a porous offensive line that got injuries, and some of the other guys that they brought in fell off a cliff at times. And he got rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds, the most in the NFL last year. And he was also 32nd in success rate in EPA per play. So defenses read that. You're going to see 2020, 2021 old Big Ben redux if this offensive line can't hold up. If it can, this guy can still push the ball down the field a little bit, but he's not going to be, a magician that creates behind in the pocket a ton either. And so let's see where this can go. But I do think the Steelers' offensive line, I think they have an answer in Zach Frazier. I'm highly optimistic about McCormick and Fautanu. I think they're going to get requisite play from Sayamalo. Broderick Jones is going to be the big question. And then the depth. I don't love the depth. I'm happy with Ryan McCollum as your backup center. I liked what he did in the 2 games last year. He played when Zach Frazier got hurt. If he can play guard for you and be your swing kind of interior guy at center and guard, I think you're comfortable there. Spencer Anderson's tape, rough last year. I think they could explore adding another tackle. Calvin Anderson's here, of course, and his Baltimore tape actually last year was fine. But throughout his career, been a roller coaster ride there. Could they bring in another player, maybe from the UFL pool? That could be somebody here. I think that's a question. Dylan Cook's an interesting name, I think, in that depth conversation as well. I could see them adding a depth offensive lineman or two, trying to strengthen that group because they did lose some guys in that room. But we will see. So this offensive line, I think, is going to be the driver of this offense, the driver of this team. If this offensive line has a breakout year, really starts to coalesce into something, I think the Steelers are going to have an opportunity here to be a better offense, respectable. They can be an offense with higher peaks, a little more efficiency on the ground because last year they were just so poor on the ground. We will see where that goes. But this offensive line is going to be the huge kind of X factor you circle here as to why this team is successful offensively or not, to be quite honest with you, in a lot of facets. So keep an eye on that. And Broderick Jones, in my opinion, the X factor there moving from left tackle, moving from right tackle to left tackle this year. A lot of questions still on this offensive line and how these guys are going to kind of suit out. But he is the one that is going to be bearing the most watching to me. So we will see where that goes. All right, folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell for more. We'll be back next week talking about the Steelers. Make sure to leave your comments below. I'm taking questions because, again, that's probably going to power many of the topics here going through until training camp. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell for more. Read the Steelers stuff over at penlive.com/Steelers. Thanks for listening, everybody.